I told my ex-boyfriend I was dying, and he came back to me within 48 hours. 2 years of begging, of humiliating myself, of watching him move on with someone prettier and more stable, erased in a single phone call. All it took was 3 words: I have cancer. The relief I felt when he showed up at my door, eyes red from crying, arms open to hold me, I wish I could tell you it was complicated. That guilt immediately gnawed at my conscience, that I hesitated before stepping into his embrace. But I didn't hesitate. I fell into his arms, and I felt, for the first time in 2 years, like I could breathe again. My name is Audrey Simmons. I'm 32 years old, and 6 months ago, I faked terminal cancer to win back the love of my life. It worked. He moved back in, he proposed, we're getting married in 3 months, and I am drowning in the lie. Have you ever wanted something so badly that you convinced yourself any price was worth paying? I'm asking because I need to know if I'm a monster or if I'm just human. Have you ever crossed a line you knew was wrong because the alternative, living without something you desperately needed, felt like a kind of death? Tell me in the comments. Tell me I'm not the only one who's been that desperate. Or tell me I'm a terrible person. I think I need to hear both. Let me be clear about something. I know what I did was wrong. I've known from the moment the words left my mouth. I'm not writing this to justify my actions or to seek absolution. I'm writing this because the weight of the secret is crushing me, and I need someone, anyone, to know the truth before it destroys everything I lied to build. But to understand how I got here, you need to understand what I lost. You need to understand Daniel. We met 7 years ago at a coffee shop, which sounds like the beginning of every boring love story ever told. But ours wasn't boring. Daniel Martinez was the most alive person I'd ever encountered. Passionate, spontaneous, the kind of man who would wake you up at 3 a.m. to watch a meteor shower or book last-minute flights to cities neither of you had ever visited. He was also brilliant, a software engineer who built things that actually mattered, apps that helped people, systems that made the world slightly less broken. He had this way of looking at problems that made solutions seem obvious, inevitable, beautiful. And for 5 years, he loved me. Not casually, not conveniently. He loved me like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. He loved me in ways that made me believe, for the first time, that I was worth loving. Then I ruined everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The unraveling started 2.5 years ago, though the seeds were planted long before. I'd always struggled with anxiety, the clinical kind, the kind that makes your heart race at nothing and convinces you that every good thing in your life is about to disappear. I'd been managing it for years with therapy and medication and the kind of white-knuckle self-control that looks like stability from the outside. But managing isn't the same as curing. And when my mother was diagnosed with early onset dementia at 58, something inside me cracked. I started spiraling. The anxiety that I'd kept contained for so long began leaking out in ways I couldn't control. Panic attacks in the middle of the night, obsessive thoughts I couldn't shut off, a desperate, clinging need for reassurance that exhausted everyone around me, especially Daniel. I became someone I didn't recognize, jealous, paranoid, constantly convinced he was about to leave me, which meant I did everything in my power to prevent it, checking his phone, questioning his whereabouts, crying whenever he wanted to spend time with friends instead of me. I was suffocating him. I knew I was suffocating him, but knowing and stopping are different things, and I couldn't seem to stop. The fights got worse, more frequent, more vicious. Things were said that couldn't be unsaid, and through it all, I watched myself destroying the best thing in my life, powerless to stop it, like I was trapped behind glass watching someone else set my house on fire. The final fight happened on a Tuesday night. I don't remember what started it, something small probably. They were always small things that escalated into something monstrous. What I remember is Daniel's face when he finally said the words I'd been dreading for months. I can't do this anymore, Audrey. I love you. God help me, I still love you. But I can't keep being the only thing holding you together. You need help I can't give. And I need— He stopped, ran his hands through his hair. I need to be able to breathe. Please, I was crying, begging, all my worst fears condensing into this single moment. Please don't leave. I'll change. I'll get better. I'll do whatever you want. It's not about what I want. It's about what's healthy for both of us. He was crying too, which somehow made it worse. I think you need to learn how to be okay on your own, and I think I've been enabling you by staying. He moved out the next day, and I fell apart completely. The months after Daniel left were the darkest of my life. I'd like to say I used that time productively, threw myself into therapy, worked on my issues, emerged stronger and healthier and ready to move on. That's what you're supposed to do. That's what all the self-help books and well-meaning friends tell you is possible. But I didn't do any of that. Instead, I collapsed. I stopped going to work, stopped answering my phone, stopped eating regularly, showering regularly, doing any of the basic human maintenance that separates functioning adults from cautionary tales. I lay in our bed, my bed now, just mine, and I replayed every mistake I'd made, every paranoid accusation, every time I'd pushed him away while desperately trying to pull him closer. I cataloged my failures with the obsessive precision of someone who believes that understanding the wound will somehow heal it. It didn't heal anything. My sister, Claire, was the one who finally intervened. She showed up at my apartment 3 weeks after Daniel left and found me in a state she later described as genuinely frightening. She cleaned me up, forced me to eat, and drove me to a psychiatric facility where I spent the next 2 weeks under observation. The diagnosis was severe depression with anxiety disorder. I was put on new medication, assigned a new therapist, given a whole toolkit of coping strategies that were supposed to help me rebuild my life. And slowly, painfully, I started to stabilize. But stabilizing isn't the same as healing. I was functional again, going to work, maintaining basic hygiene, even occasionally laughing at things that were funny. From the outside, I probably looked like someone who was moving on. Inside, I was still in love with Daniel. Not the healthy kind of love that wishes the other person well and accepts that some relationships aren't meant to be. This was something darker. An obsession that lived in my bones, that colored every moment of every day, that made the idea of a future without him feel like a death sentence. I kept track of him on social media, watched from a distance as he started dating again, felt something shatter when I saw the first photo of him with someone new, a woman named Jessica who was everything I wasn't, calm, confident, secure in herself. I told myself I would get over him, that time would work its magic, that eventually the wound would close, and I'd be able to imagine a life that didn't include Daniel Martinez. 2 years passed. The wound never closed. The idea came to me at my mother's birthday party. She didn't know it was her birthday. The dementia had progressed to the point where most days she didn't recognize me, but my family still gathered every year. More for ourselves than for her. A way of holding on to something that was already gone. I was sitting in the corner, watching my mother smile at people she didn't remember, when my aunt mentioned that a family friend had recently been diagnosed with cancer. "It's amazing how it brings people together," she said, shaking her head. "Her ex-husband came back, you know. They'd been divorced for years, but the moment he heard she was sick, he was right there, holding her hand through treatment. They're closer now than they ever were." Something shifted in my brain. I didn't think I should fake cancer. That's not how these things work. It was more like a door opening. just a crack, onto a possibility I hadn't considered before. What if there was a way to get Daniel back? Not through begging, which I'd already tried, not through self-improvement, which hadn't made a difference, but through something more primal, something that would bypass all his carefully constructed boundaries and speak directly to the part of him that still loved me, because I believed he still loved me. Despite everything, despite the 2 years of silence and the new girlfriend and the obvious evidence that he'd moved on, I believed, I needed to believe, that somewhere inside him, I still mattered. And what brings people back faster than mortality? The thought was horrifying. I pushed it away immediately, disgusted with myself for even considering it. I was damaged, yes, desperate, yes, but I wasn't evil. I wasn't the kind of person who would lie about something so serious, so sacred, just to manipulate someone into loving them again. Was I? For weeks, the idea haunted me. It appeared in my dreams, in my quiet moments, in the spaces between thoughts. I'd be doing something normal, grocery shopping, sitting in traffic, brushing my teeth, and suddenly I'd be imagining the phone call, the words, the look on Daniel's face when he heard. I started researching, not to actually do it, just to understand. I read about cancer symptoms, treatment protocols, survival rates. I learned the vocabulary of illness, the rhythms of diagnosis and treatment and decline. I told myself it was morbid curiosity, nothing more. But some part of me knew. Some part of me was preparing. The breaking point came when I found out Daniel and Jessica were engaged. It was posted on Facebook, because of course it was, because the universe has a sick sense of humor. A photo of them in some picturesque location, her hand extended toward the camera to show off a ring, both of them glowing with the particular happiness of people who have found their person and locked it down. I stared at that photo for an hour. Something inside me, the last thread of sanity maybe, or the final barrier between who I was and who I was about to become, snapped. I picked up my phone and I called him. He answered on the third ring. Audrey? Surprised, but not hostile. We hadn't spoken in over a year. Is everything okay? No. My voice came out strange, thick with tears. I hadn't consciously started crying. I need to see you. There's something I have to tell you. I, Audrey, I don't think that's a good idea. I'm sick, Daniel. I'm really sick, and I thought you should know before. I let the sentence trail off. Let him fill in the blank. The silence on the other end stretched for an eternity. What do you mean, sick? I found out a month ago. I didn't want to tell anyone. I've just been trying to process it. But my voice broke. I couldn't let things end the way they did between us. I needed you to know that I'm sorry for everything before I can't say it anymore. Audrey, what's wrong? What do you have? Here it was, the point of no return. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. I'd researched carefully. Pancreatic cancer was deadly, fast-moving, difficult to treat. It would explain any symptoms I claimed to have, fatigue, weight loss, pain, while being hard to disprove without extensive medical documentation. They're saying maybe 6 months, a year if I'm lucky. Daniel made a sound like he'd been punched. Oh God, Audrey, where are you? Are you at home? I'm coming over, right now. Don't go anywhere. He hung up before I could respond. I sat in my apartment, phone still in my hand, and waited for the man I loved to comfort me for a death that wasn't going to happen. I wish I could tell you I felt guilty in that moment, that the magnitude of what I'd done crashed over me and I called him back. But I need to ask you something first. Have you ever told a lie that felt so necessary, so vital to your survival, that you couldn't bring yourself to take it back, even when you knew it was wrong, even when you knew it would hurt people? Type yes or no in the comments, and if yes, tell me what happened. I need to know if I'm alone in this particular darkness, or if this is something humans are capable of when they're desperate enough. I didn't call him back. I waited. And 45 minutes later, Daniel Martinez was standing in my doorway, crying, pulling me into his arms, telling me everything was going to be okay. The first few weeks were everything I dreamed of. Daniel was there constantly, not smothering, but present, attentive in a way he'd never been during our actual relationship, when the demands of daily life had sometimes made us take each other for granted. Now, every moment felt precious. Every conversation felt meaningful. Every touch carried the weight of borrowed time. He broke off his engagement to Jessica within 3 days. I found out later that she hadn't taken it well, had accused him of still being in love with me, of using my illness as an excuse to escape a commitment he'd never fully wanted. She wasn't entirely wrong, but she also didn't know the full truth. Nobody did. I constructed the lie with the same obsessive attention I'd once devoted to driving Daniel away. Fake doctor's appointments that I'd leave for in the morning, returning with plausible stories about consultations and treatment options. Carefully calibrated symptoms, tiredness that came and went, occasional bad days that kept me in bed, subtle weight loss that I achieved through diet and concealer under my eyes. I joined online support groups for cancer patients, absorbing their vocabulary, their experiences, their daily realities. I learned how to talk about my illness with the weary familiarity of someone actually living it. I learned which details to share and which to hold back. I learned that the most convincing lies are the ones wrapped in genuine emotion. And there was genuine emotion. I wasn't faking my love for Daniel, my gratitude at having him back, my terror at the thought of losing him again. The cancer was the only lie. Everything else was devastatingly real. Daniel moved back in after 2 weeks. "I'm not going to let you go through this alone," he said, unpacking his boxes in the apartment we'd once shared. "Whatever happens, however long we have, I want to spend it with you." I should have felt triumph. I'd gotten exactly what I wanted. Daniel, back in my life, back in my bed, looking at me the way he used to before everything fell apart. Instead, I felt the first stirrings of a new kind of anxiety, because now I had to maintain the lie, not just for a phone call or a conversation, but indefinitely. Every day, every week, every month, I had to be a cancer patient. I had to track my fictional treatments, manufacture believable side effects, prepare for the questions that would inevitably come about prognosis and progression and end-of-life planning. I was trapped in a performance with no exit strategy, and somewhere in the back of my mind, a voice I tried very hard to ignore kept asking, "What happens when you don't die?" 3 months into the lie, the cracks started showing. Not in my performance, I'd gotten terrifyingly good at that. The cracks were in my psyche. The cognitive dissonance of living a lie this enormous was doing something to me, reshaping my brain in ways I couldn't fully understand. The tone remains serious, not about being caught exactly, but about actually having cancer. I dream of hospital rooms and chemotherapy and the slow deterioration of my body, and I'd wake up genuinely uncertain whether I was sick or not. The line between the lie and reality was blurring. I became paranoid about being discovered. Every question Daniel asked felt like a potential trap. Every concerned look from a friend seemed to carry suspicion. I started avoiding my family, making excuses for why they couldn't visit, terrified that my mother, even in her dementia, would somehow see through me. And then there was the guilt. I'd expected the guilt, had braced for it, had told myself I could handle it if it meant having Daniel back, but I'd underestimated how corrosive it would be. Every tender moment between us was poisoned by my knowledge of how I'd manufactured it. Every time Daniel looked at me with love and concern, I felt like a fraud, which I was. The worst part was watching him sacrifice for me. He'd taken a less demanding position at work so he could be home more. He'd depleted his savings account for treatment expenses I claimed to need. He'd put his entire life on hold to care for a dying woman who wasn't dying at all. I was stealing from him, not just money, but time, energy, the future he could have had with Jessica or someone else, someone who deserved him. And I couldn't stop, because stopping meant confessing, and confessing meant losing him, again, forever this time. So I doubled down, invented new complications, new setbacks, new reasons why the timeline kept shifting. The doctors were trying a new treatment. The cancer had responded better than expected. I was buying myself time, months, maybe years. But to what end? The lie couldn't go on forever. Eventually, I would either have to die or miraculously recover, and either option led to questions I couldn't answer. I started thinking about actually getting sick, not faking it anymore, but genuinely harming myself to make the lie true. I researched ways to induce symptoms that would show up on medical tests. I considered exposing myself to carcinogens or finding a doctor corrupt enough to provide false documentation. That's when I realized I'd gone insane. Not metaphorically, not dramatically, but genuinely, clinically insane. The person I'd become, someone who would consider giving herself cancer to maintain a lie, was not someone I recognized, was not someone who should be allowed to exist. Something had to change. I just didn't know what. Daniel proposed on the 4-month anniversary of my diagnosis. We were at home, I'd stopped going out much, claiming fatigue, and he'd cooked dinner, set the table with candles, created the kind of romantic atmosphere that belonged in movies rather than real life. "I know this might seem crazy," he said, getting down on one knee. "We're not supposed to be thinking about the future right now, but that's exactly why I want to do this, because whatever time we have left, I want to spend it as your husband." He opened the box, a simple diamond ring, beautiful in its understatement. "Audrey, I've loved you for 7 years. I've made mistakes. We both have. But losing you once taught me something important. Life is too short to let the people you love slip away. So I'm asking, will you marry me? Will you let me be there for you, in sickness and in health, for as long as we have?" I stared at the ring. This was it. Everything I'd wanted, everything I'd lied and manipulated and destroyed myself to achieve. Daniel, on his knees, asking me to be his wife. The fairy tale ending I'd been chasing for 2 years. And I felt nothing but horror, because I understood, in that moment, what I had done. Not abstractly, not intellectually, but viscerally. I had weaponized this man's love against him. I had exploited his compassion, his loyalty, his fundamental decency. I had turned his best qualities into tools for my own manipulation. He wasn't proposing to me. He was proposing to a dying woman who didn't exist. "Yes," I heard myself say. "Yes, of course, yes." He slid the ring onto my finger and kissed me, and I cried, real tears, but not for the reasons he thought. I cried because I finally understood that I'd won and lost at the same time. The planning started immediately. Daniel wanted a quick wedding, understandable, given my prognosis, and I found myself swept up in a whirlwind of decisions about venues and flowers and guest lists. My family was involved now, which meant my sister was calling constantly, my aunt was making arrangements, my father was preparing to walk me down the aisle. Everyone was so happy for me, so proud of my strength in the face of adversity. so moved by the love story of a man who'd come back to marry his dying ex-girlfriend. I started having panic attacks again, not the manageable kind I'd learned to cope with in therapy, but full-blown episodes that left me hyperventilating on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m. I was living in a pressure cooker of my own creation, the walls closing in with every passing day. I had to tell him. I knew that now. The lie couldn't continue, not through a wedding, not through a marriage, not through the inevitable questions about why I wasn't dying when I was supposed to be. The longer I waited, the worse the devastation would be. But every time I tried to find the words, they died in my throat. How do you tell someone that everything they believe about you is a lie? How do you destroy someone's reality and expect them to forgive you? The answer, I was slowly realizing, is that you don't. Some betrayals are too complete for forgiveness. The night I finally told him the truth, it wasn't planned. We were lying in bed 3 weeks before the wedding. Daniel was talking about our future, not the distant future, which my fictional cancer had made impossible to discuss, but the immediate future, the honeymoon he was planning, the memories he wanted to make. "I've been thinking," he said, stroking my hair, "when you're feeling up to it, we should go to Italy. You always wanted to see Florence. Maybe in the spring, when the weather's nice. We could—" I'm not dying. The words came out before I could stop them. Flat, simple. The truth, finally, after 6 months of lies. Daniel's hand stopped moving. "What?" I sat up, turned to face him. The room was dark, but I could see his expression in the ambient light from the window. Confusion, not understanding yet. "I don't have cancer, Daniel. I never had cancer. I made it up. All of it. The diagnosis, the treatments, the symptoms, everything. I lied to you because I was desperate to get you back, and I didn't know any other way." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. "I don't." He shook his head, like he was trying to clear water from his ears. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I faked terminal cancer to manipulate you into coming back to me. I've been lying to you for 6 months. I've been lying to everyone." I watched the understanding dawn on his face. It happened slowly, in stages. First disbelief, then horror, then something that looked like his entire world collapsing. "No," his voice was strange, choked. "No, that's not— You showed me the medical records. You had appointments. You lost weight. I created fake documents. I drove around during appointments and made up stories. I stopped eating to lose weight. I lied, Daniel, about all of it." He stood up from the bed, backed away from me like I was something dangerous. "Why are you saying this? Is this some kind of— Are you protecting me from something? Did the doctors give you bad news?" "There are no doctors. There is no cancer. I've been healthy this entire time." "Stop it," his voice cracked. "Stop saying that. It's not true. It can't be true." "It is true, and I'm so sorry. I'm so, so sorry. I know there's no excuse, no justification." "You're right." His face had gone hard now, the horror crystallizing into something colder. "No." His voice was strange. "No, that's not— You showed me the medical records. You had appointments. You lost weight. I created fake documents. I drove around during appointments and made up stories. I stopped eating to lose weight. I lied, Daniel, about all of it." He stood up from the bed, backed away from me like I was something dangerous. "Why are you saying this? Is this some kind of— Are you protecting me from something? Did the doctors give you bad news?" "There are no doctors. There is no cancer. I've been healthy this entire time." "Stop it." His voice cracked. "Stop saying that. It's not true. It can't be true." "It is true. And I'm so sorry. I'm so, so sorry. I know there's no excuse, no justification. You're right. His face had gone hard now, the horror crystallizing into something colder. There's no excuse. There's no justification. You made me think you were dying. You made me grieve for you. You made me break my engagement, upend my entire life, spend my savings. For what? So you could have me back? I was sick, Daniel, not with cancer, but with something else. I was so broken after you left, so completely destroyed. Don't! He was shouting now, tears streaming down his face. Don't you dare make this about your mental health. Don't you dare try to explain this away as some kind of illness. What you did was a choice, a series of choices made over and over again, every single day to lie to my face. I know. Do you? Do you understand what you've done? I mourned you, Audrey. I lay awake at night crying because the woman I loved was dying. I held your hand through treatments that never happened. I proposed to you because I wanted to give you something beautiful before you. He couldn't finish. I sat there, silent, accepting the onslaught. I deserved every word. I deserved worse. I need to leave, he said finally, his voice dead now, emptied of emotion. I need to get out of here before I say something I can't take back. Daniel, don't. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't try to explain. There is nothing you can say that will make this okay. Nothing. He grabbed his keys and his wallet. At the door, he paused. You know the worst part? I actually believed you were getting better. I thought we were going to have a miracle. I thought love was going to save you. A hollow laugh. I was right about one thing. You were never going to die. Because you were never sick, just broken. In a way I don't think anyone can fix. The door closed behind him. I sat in the darkness, engagement ring still on my finger, and listened to the silence of everything I'd destroyed. That was 3 months ago. Daniel hasn't spoken to me since that night. He moved out while I was at work the next day, took his things and left. No note, no goodbye. I found out through mutual friends that he'd gone to stay with his brother, that he was processing, that he'd asked everyone not to mention my name in his presence. The wedding was canceled. My family found out why. That was almost worse than losing Daniel. Watching my sister's face transform from confusion to horror to disgust. Hearing my father say he didn't recognize me anymore. Seeing my aunt, the one who'd first planted the idea in my head with her story about the family friend, look at me like I was a stranger. How could you? Claire asked me after Daniel had been gone for a week. How could you do something so cruel to him, to us, to yourself? I didn't have an answer. I still don't. I've been back in therapy, intensive therapy, 3 times a week, trying to understand how I became someone capable of this. My therapist says it's related to my attachment issues, my fear of abandonment, the way my mother's illness triggered a desperate need for security that overrode my moral compass. Maybe she's right. Maybe there are explanations buried somewhere in my psychology, reasons that make sense of the monstrous thing I did. But explanations aren't excuses, and understanding doesn't equal forgiveness. I lost everything. Daniel, my family's respect, my sense of myself as a decent person. The lie I told to get what I wanted destroyed every relationship I had, including my relationship with my own reflection. Some nights, I think about what would have happened if I hadn't confessed. If I just kept the lie going, married Daniel, and then staged some kind of miraculous recovery. The cancer went into remission. The new treatment worked. Would he have believed me? Would we have gone on to build a life together? The foundation rotted through with deception, but the structure somehow still standing? I'll never know. What I do know is that confession was the first honest thing I'd done in months. It cost me everything I'd lied to obtain, But it also gave me something I hadn't had in a long time: the truth. Ugly, devastating, irredeemable truth. I'm 32 years old. I'm alone. I'm starting over with nothing but the wreckage of the person I used to be. But I'm not lying anymore. That has to count for something. Last week, I got a message from Daniel, the first contact since he walked out. It was short. "I'm still processing what you did. I don't know if I'll ever understand it, but I wanted you to know that I hope you get help, real help, for whatever's broken inside you. Because what you did wasn't just cruel to me, it was cruel to yourself. You deserve better than the person you became. I hope you find her." I read those words 100 times. He didn't forgive me. I don't think he ever will. But he wished me well. After everything I'd done, he still wished me well. That's more than I deserve. I'm sharing this story because I need people to know what I did, not for sympathy. I don't deserve that. Not for understanding. There may not be any. But because secrets are what got me here in the first place. Secrets and desperation, and the belief that if I just controlled the narrative tightly enough, I could make reality bend to my will. I was wrong. You can't build a real life on a lie. You can't manipulate someone into loving you. You can't fake your way to happiness. The cancer was never real, but the sickness was, just not the kind that shows up on medical tests. I'm trying to heal now, really heal, not just pretend to. It's slow and painful, and nothing like the dramatic recovery I'd imagined when I was playing the dying girl. Real healing doesn't come with romantic proposals and tearful reconciliations. It comes with hard work and honest conversations and the daily choice to face yourself, even when what you see makes you want to look away. I don't know if Daniel will ever speak to me again. I don't know if my family will ever fully trust me. I don't know if I'll ever be able to form a healthy relationship, or if I've damaged myself beyond repair. But I know one thing: I'm done lying, and that has to be the start of something. So that's my confession, the whole ugly truth about how I faked terminal cancer to get my ex-boyfriend back, and how it destroyed everything, including the relationship I lied to save. I need to hear from you, even if what you have to say is hard to read. Have you ever done something unforgivable in the name of love? Something that still haunts you, that you can't take back no matter how much you wish you could? Tell me about it in the comments. Not to make me feel better about what I did, nothing can do that, but because I think there's power in confession, in saying the worst things about yourself out loud and letting the world decide what to make of them. And here's the question I'm still asking myself: is redemption possible after something like this? Can a person who did what I did ever become someone worthy of love again? Or are some lines, once crossed, impossible to come back from? Type redemption or no redemption in the comments and tell me what you believe. I'll read every answer. I have a lot of time now, and for the first time in my life, I'm ready to hear the truth, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts, because that's where healing starts. Back quote.